Before Mr. Brooks delivers the commencement address, it is my honour to add a few additional words of introduction. As Dean Singel noted, Mr. Brooks is highly respected by opinion leaders from all segments of society, and by both his vocal opponents and his dedicated supporters. In an age that expects quick solutions and automatic ideological stances on current issues, David Brooks has been called a beacon of intelligence and integrity. The list of books that he has written is to identify some of our culture's most relevant topics. Bobo's in Paradise, which was subtitled The New Upper Class and How They Got There. On Paradise Drive, with the subtitle How We Live Now and Always Have in the Future Tense. And The Social Animal, subtitled The Hidden Sources of Love, Character and Achievement. At this commencement ceremony, which is a time to reflect on the culture that we are all creating and are all part of, it will be a privilege to hear Mr. Brooks's message. So please join me in welcoming David Brooks.
It was an honor, first let me say, to get that degree. That was the biggest degree anybody has ever received. It's also cool to be here in Assembly Hall on the floor. I may look like Danny DeVito, but I feel like Victor Oladipo at this moment. And it's a great honor to be here at IU. As you may know, my son Joshua is finishing his junior year in the college, and I've spent a lot of time in Bloomington. I've been drinking at Nick's. I've waited many hours to get omelets at the Village Deli. I've learned to model my entire life on Ken Nunn. I've never worn those red and white candy stripe sweatpants, but I have attended a pre-football game tailgate with 5,000 college freshmen, which for a middle-aged guy is actually an emotionally scarring experience. And so over these 3 years of coming to Bloomington pretty regularly, two things have happened to me. I've come to love Indiana University, and I've come to hate Syracuse University. I'm especially pleased to get an IU degree before my son, who's been slaving away for 3 years. I show up for 1 day. That's fantastic. And it's a special honor to be speaking to you graduate students. You're at a beautiful spot in your life, more mature than the undergrads, still sexier than the faculty, sort of right there in the middle there. You've been through college commencements before. You know the etiquette. After you get your degree, it's customary to give President McRobbie a little tip, 10 or 20 bucks, should be fine, just to show he did a good job. It's also customary to give the commencement speaker a little something. No more than $600 or $700 usually, or 5,000 bucks for Kelly grads. This money is actually not going to me. It's to bribe Mitch Daniels out of Purdue. So, being graduate students, you also know the commencement addresses have a certain form. The school asks a person who has achieved a certain level of career success to give a speech telling you career success is not all that important. And we're supposed to give you a few minutes of complete garbage advice. Listen to your inner voice, be true to yourself. First, my generation leaves you a mountain of debt, then we give you career-destroying advice to prevent you from paying it off. So I'm going to label out some advice, but this is grade A material. This has been tested with a scientific method. And my advice is going to be about what to worry about and what not to worry about. I've been to a lot of university campuses over the last year, teaching courses and getting to know students. I've been struck, as everybody is, by the awesome competence of students today, but also by the high level of deep insecurities. We've all lived through a tough decade, 2 wars, financial crisis, a recession, doubts about national decline, doubts about a collapsing middle class, and I won't try to sugarcoat all that. So my job, I think, is not to eliminate your worries, but to make sure you're worried about the right things. Now, the first thing you shouldn't worry about is the question, will I be happy? This will not be a problem. Many of you are in your 20s. Studies show that people get happier as they move through their 20s. Over life, happiness tends to go down after the 20s. It bottoms out at age 47. This is called having teenage children. But then happiness levels rise again as people enjoy a big burst of happiness in the first 10 years after retirement. So at least for the next little while, you're probably going to be pretty happy. And it's pretty much easy to make sure you are. Join a club that meets at least once a month. That produces the same happiness gain as doubling your income. Use what money you have to buy experiences, not things. Don't try to control other people. You can't do it. Don't ruminate on bad events. The daily activities that contribute most to happiness are having dinner with friends and having sex. The daily activity that detracts most from happiness is commuting. Have more sex, commute less. I actually don't know what happens if they're done simultaneously, now I think about it. The second thing you should not worry about is, will I get a good job? Job is something to hustle for. It's not something to be frantic about. The economy is mediocre, but people in your position have a huge leg up. The unemployment rate for people with advanced degrees is low. And if you ask Americans if they like their job, something like 90% year after year say yes. I've seen millions of people like you before. They get jobs and they like them. I recently asked senior citizens who read my columns to send me essays in which they graded themselves on their performance for life. And when it came to their professional lives, most of them gave themselves A's. Most people do pretty well in this sphere, especially if they've got some education. And the seniors who wrote to me learned some simple tips to make sure they have good professional lives. It's obvious but true: lean toward risk. Many more old people regret the risks they didn't take than the ones they did. Divide your life into chapters. When a big day like this one comes along, tell yourself it's in the beginning of the next chapter of your life. Think about what you're going to do with this chapter. Then a few years from now, pick another big day and think of it as a new chapter. The people who have bad careers let time drift by in an unbroken flow. And when they get old, they look back and wonder why they didn't change things around. It's also important to exploit the flexibility of the next few years. A few decades ago when I graduated, people tend to settle down right after school. They got a permanent job, they had kids, they bought a house. Now young people spend a decade or so experimenting with life while their parents go quietly insane. But, sorry parents, this experimentation phase is a good thing. When you get your next job, you're probably going to be toward the bottom of the professional ladder, providing older people in your offices with little more than fact-checking and sexual tension. But it's still a good idea to try on new jobs the way you try on clothes, waiting for the one that fits. The third thing not to worry about is, will I find my passion? Commencement speakers are always telling you to find your passion. This is the biggest load of crap old people have ever foisted on the young. You will not find your passion. Your passion will find you, and relax and wait for it. One of my heroes in life is a woman named Frances Perkins, who was the first woman ever to serve in the presidential cabinet. She was Secretary of Labor under Franklin Roosevelt. She was a well-meaning young woman, but not super focused when she was young. One day in 1911, she was having tea in Lower Manhattan, and she heard a commotion outside. And she rushed out in the street, Washington Square, if you know New York, and stumbled upon one of the most famous fires in American history, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. She rushed to the building and watched 47 people hurl themselves out of the top floor windows to their deaths to avoid burning to death. She was there when they pulled the charred bodies outside, and at that moment she dedicated herself to worker safety and labor rights and spent the rest of her life in that field. She didn't plan on stumbling on that fire, but that passion found her. And the lesson is, don't think about what you want from life, think about what life wants from you. Don't ask questions of life, ask what questions life is asking of you. Some large problem will need solving, it'll be right in front of you, so pick that one and define it as your mission and your calling. Okay, now I've given a little pompous advice on what not to worry about. Now I'm going to tell you about what you should worry about. First, will I get more boring as I age? This you should definitely worry about. I meet a lot of exciting 25-year-olds. They've done amazing things. They've usually formed 9 companies, solved 3 formerly fatal diseases. During spring break, they unicycled across Thailand. But most of them are a little more boring at 40 than they were at 25. And so how can you avoid settling into this rut? Here's one idea. Spend the next 10 years of your life in professional experimentation. But once you're settled in your job and in your family, spend the next 20 years in spiritual experimentation. When your lifestyle gets tranquil, make your soul chaotic. Ask yourself, am I really what God loves? Or if you're an atheist, ask yourself, am I really living up to the highest standards of virtue? And what are those standards? And if those questions don't produce the satisfying answers, go on a spiritual lark. Spiritual chaos will keep you up nights, but make you a more interesting person and probably a better one. The second thing to worry about, which some of you hopefully already conquered, is will I marry well? This is the most important decision you're going to make in your life. If you have a great marriage and a crappy career, you'll be happy. If you have a great career and a crappy marriage, you'll be unhappy. I tell university presidents that since marriage is the most important decision anybody's going to make, they should have academic departments on how to marry. They should teach the neuroscience of marriage, the sociology of marriage, the psychology of marriage. Everybody should get a degree on how to marry. Nobody listens to me, so give yourself a degree. Read Jane Austen or George Eliot novels. Learn how to think about the problem from the masters. Take your time. Remember, marriage has 2 components: passionate love, which is the hot stuff that comes in the beginning; companionate love, which is the gentle being together that lasts for decades. Pick a person who's going to be right for both phases. They say opposites attract, but the research suggests this is a high-risk proposition. It's safer to marry somebody like yourself. Ladies, marry a guy who has some deep platonic friendships with women, somebody who has some basic admiration for the gender. Guys, marry a woman who's going to force you to talk, who won't let you retreat into sullen silence when things don't go your way. If you go to a hospice, ask the dying men what they regret most, and a few will tell you that the members of their own family don't really know who they are because they never had the courage to open up to them. Don't be that guy, and don't marry the woman who lets you be that guy. The third thing to worry about, will I turn my weakness into strength? You probably know what you're good at, and you probably enjoy reflecting on your talents, but the value of your life will ultimately be shaped by your limitations, not your strengths. Can you turn your sins into virtues? You look at the great figures of history. Moses was said to be the meekest man on earth. He turned that meekness into a new kind of leadership. St. Augustine was a lusty, ambitious man. He turned that passionate nature toward a love of God and lost himself in God's mercy and grace. Another of my heroes is an 18th century English writer, Samuel Johnson, who was a hideously ugly man. He was born large and misshapen. He got smallpox as a boy, which scarred up his face. A botched operation left more deep scars and twisted up his jaw. He was apparently disgusting to eat with because he had herky-jerky motions that would spew food in all directions. But he turned that ugliness into compassion. He'd walk the streets putting pennies in the hands of sleeping orphans. He let former slaves, moneyless doctors, and former prostitutes live with him in his house. He turned his awkwardness into an observational power. He couldn't control his body, so he worked furiously to control his mind, to master his thoughts and discipline his view of the world. We don't think about this much, but the people who turn their weaknesses into strengths are some of the most admirable people on earth. One final worry, something you should worry about. Will I turn into a shrewd animal? We live in a competitive, meritocratic world. It's tough to get ahead and stay ahead in the global economy, and this creates a temptation and really a mental disease, which you might call mental materialism. People who live with this disease focus exclusively on the material world, on technology, on management, on career strategies, on nice real estate. Every day becomes a prudential strategy session as they chart their course to success. There's nothing wrong with these things, but if it's all you got, you lose the ability to speak in a sophisticated moral language. You have trouble thinking outside the categories of the market. You turn into shrewd animals. crafty, self-preserving creatures who are adept at playing the game and who turn everything into a game. So it's important to have a counterculture. Many of us found our countercultures at university. When I was a student, I was assigned the great books, the great novelists, writers, theologians, books by Dostoevsky, Thucydides, Shakespeare, Dorothy Day. They were written by moral geniuses. They were written by people obsessed with the great internal combat against weakness and obsessed with character. And if you pull those old books off the shelf, if you carry them around from apartment to apartment all through your life and read them from time to time, you're bound to be influenced and uplifted by them. You happen to be graduating from a school where your library looks like a Triscuit. But I hope you'll keep the library you've acquired here and reread it, decade after decade. And if you do, you'll find yourself living by a moral logic that is completely different than the logic of the shrewd animal. It's a logic of inversion. You have to be lost to be saved. Failure leads to the deepest success, while success often leads to the greatest failure. The purpose in life is not to find yourself, it's to lose yourself. So I hope you carry today's books and that inverse logic and the spirit of Indiana University with you from city to city, from country to country as you go forth, and I just hope you never wind up at Syracuse. Thank you.